Tanesha, what caused your kidney health problems?
For me, it was diabetes. I've had diabetes. I was about 19, 20.
Did it come as a surprise to you when you developed kidney disease, or was that something you had thought of as a possibility?
Honestly, I had never thought about it, never really heard much about it, honestly. So, yeah, it was definitely a shocker.
What did you think when you got the diagnosis of kidney disease?
Well, I had gone in initially because I was just having swelling in my ankles and feet that wouldn't go down.
Mm-hmm.
But that was pretty much the only thing that I had going on. So I went in, they gave me a water pill, told me if that didn't work to come back. I went back. In between, I did some blood work, and that's when they found out I was actually in stage 3. I was shocked. Like, I don't know what I was expecting to hear, but it just wasn't kidney failure.
When did you start thinking about a transplant or start talking with your medical team about a transplant?
Once I found out, I had to get a nephrologist, and he actually does a class in his office that like discusses your options and different types of dialysis if it goes there, and if you want to do transplant. He immediately wanted to talk about transplant, though.
And what did you think when it seemed like that was a path you'd likely be going down?
It was just scary. I'm like, what if I don't get a kidney? And then it's like, oh, I'm going to end up on dialysis. And then it's like, it's just a whole lot of what if. You're just really unsure.
Had you known anybody who'd received a transplant or people who were on dialysis?
I knew a couple people that had done dialysis, like one of my uncles was on dialysis and things like that. But to be honest, I never thought about what it actually meant. So yeah, it wasn't until all of this came up that I started researching and realizing how serious it was.
What was that process of getting worked up for the transplant? What was that like for you?
It's a lot. It's a whole lot. So there's classes you have to take. You have to make sure you have a support system in place. There's a ton of testing, blood work, things like that, even down to like dental work that you have to have done before they can talk about you and present you and basically decide if they want to put you on the list or not.
How long did you wait between, doing that whole workup and actually receiving the transplant?
It was about 10 months, actually. I was right at that point where they were calling because you have to do the testing and all of that every year to stay on. So they were calling to make the appointments to like start the rounds of testing and blood work and x-rays and all that stuff again. And then I got a call like the Sunday before I was going in for that appointment.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. You
were proactive in terms of, you had a support system, you were working to get, get the word out kind of. Can you tell me about that process for you?
I started off by finding groups online. That's where I actually found the foundation. And I joined a website called Kidney Connection, and that's where you can post your pictures and your story and try to find living donors and things like that. But honestly, I was spreading the word any way I could on social media, spreading it all around. I did have a benefit, so things got out that way. So a lot of people, like being diabetic, having high blood pressure, they don't realize that also increases your risk. So it's important that you keep up on everything.
Can you tell me about actually receiving the transplant and your recovery after that?
I was doing dialysis. I was on dialysis for 4 months. I was doing peritoneal, so I did it every night at home. I'd had a rough night. There were alarms that kept going off. I didn't know what was going on. I was trying to figure it out. I'm hooked up to tubes. And my best friend came over to bring me breakfast because I had talked to her and told her about my night. And ECMC calls periodically just to make sure all your contact information is the same. So I was talking to her and I realized that I missed a phone call. I was like, oh, but they were probably just calling to verify my information. And she was like, dude, not on a Sunday. I was like,
good point. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So I called back and they were like, I think we have a kidney for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I go in Sunday. They said the kidney was being flown in. They don't tell you from where or anything like that. I waited all of Sunday for them to do further testing and stuff on the kidney. And early Monday morning, they were like, "You ready to go downstairs?" And I'm like, "Oh, do I have to get another x-ray or something?" And they're like, "No, you're getting a transplant." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I'm ready. Let's go.
Oh, wow.
But the recovery for me was a bit hard. There was pain. I personally had some issues with my incision where there was a lot of drainage that built up under it. The hardest thing was probably getting regulated with the medication.
Yeah.
I had a lot of GI issues and tremors and all kinds of things that were going on while I was getting acclimated. So
You said you were on peritoneal dialysis. Can you say why you chose peritoneal versus hemodialysis?
for me, with the peritoneal dialysis, I chose that one because it seemed like the easiest one to do and still work. So you use like a cycler that can do it automatically for you, or you do it manually. So for me, that was the better option.
And how has your life changed in the time since you received your transplant?
It's like I'm back to normal, like pre-transplant status, but there's still things daily that I have to do now that I didn't have to do before, like all the medication. I still have to go get blood work done every month. And just things like that. But yeah, I'm great.
What would you say to somebody who's considering receiving a transplant, somebody who's, in the same position that you were at, 3 years ago or so?
Basically, do your research, ask all your questions. You have to be an advocate for yourself. So just make sure that you know, like, as much as you can about what's going to be happening, the process, the recovery, the medication, everything. It's a big thing. It's a big part of your life. It's a big change. So the more you know, the better.
How do you generally feel right now? I know, with everybody, there's ups and downs, but
there are, like, I still have days where I just don't feel well or I'm just tired and things like that. But overall, the good days definitely outweigh the bad for me. So
I'm happy to hear that.
yeah.
Is there anything else that you think it would be important for other people to know?
A lot of people tend to be comfortable just not knowing or ignoring health issues. Like, just make sure that you're getting your regular checkups, getting your blood work done, that you know your kidney levels and numbers, especially if you're diabetic or have high blood pressure. I just feel like ignorance is not bliss. Eventually, you have to address it. So,
oh, very well said. All right. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
no problem.